Ariel Helwani just announced that Brian Ortega versus Yair Rodriguez is in the works, and I thought I'd give my reaction to that fight being made and also an early prediction and breakdown on who I believe is going to win and where the winner's going to go from there. Let's start straight away with my reaction to the fight being made. Ariel Helwani announced on his show that that's what the UFC is working on. It's in the works. It's very close to being finalized. I'm assuming this will be a fight night main event. I don't see Ortega or Yair Rodriguez taking any 3-round fights coming up anytime soon. I believe this is probably going to be a fight night main event in May. I do believe. I don't think either of these guys are really looking to turn around too quickly after their last fights. They both took quite a bit of damage, especially in the case of Brian Ortega. However, Ortega fought in September and Yair Rodriguez fought in November, and it's already February. We're aging very rapidly, and we're all going to die soon. Time is flying by like never before. I have no idea how time is moving so fast, and I'm having a little bit of a quarter-life crisis. Anyone can relate, let me know in the comments below. It's February already. It's already been nearly 5 months since Brian Ortega fought Alexander Volkanovski. We're going to die soon, and it's very worrying. But still, I assume they're going to be looking to return around May in a fight night main events for 5 rounds. And I'm emotionally confused about why this fight has been made, because I love the matchup. I really like the matchup. It's Brian Ortega versus Yair Rodriguez. It's absolutely wonderful matchmaking. It's going to be an amazing fight as long as it lasts, because it's a featherweight bout, and they just can't help themselves but be somewhat entertaining at least. And I think Brian Ortega and Yair Rodriguez is an amazing matchup. 2 Mexicans. Maybe they're going back to Mexico, which is why they've made this matchup. Who knows? You've got Yair Rodriguez, kind of the poster child for Mexican MMA outside of Brandon Moreno, of course. And I guess in a way, I don't even know what Juliana Pena is. I'm just making random guesses and accusations right now. But Brian Ortega, of course, got that Latin descent, so the Mexicans will appreciate him as well. And I feel like they might be going back to Mexico here because they're trying to branch out. They're going back to London. They're going to other areas in the world. They're slowly but surely putting together the pieces on some of these other international events that they want to get done. And maybe they are going to Mexico for this fight. But although it's an amazing matchup, before I get into who I believe is going to win, I'm annoyed that this fight got made. And I think it's incorrect that this fight got made as well. I really disagree with this decision by the matchmakers, and this is why having some level of high IQ should be required when being in the matchmaking position. You have left Zabit versus Kattar 2, which is very good, but Zabit's last fight was against Calvin Kattar. Unless Zabit comes back and fights Josh Emmett, or Kattar fights Josh Emmett, and then Zabit has no one to come back to, I guess, other than Max Holloway, which could be a possibility as well, but I'd much rather see Holloway get his title shot and just say, hey, we love you, the Korean Zombie, but fuck you. We'll do Zabit versus the Korean Zombie. I just feel as though the matchmakers have missed a perfect opportunity to make Yair Rodriguez versus Zabit Magomedsharipov. That, in my opinion, would be one of the better fights to make right now in the featherweight division. However, it looks like they're going with Ortega versus Yair Rodriguez. 2 guys who lost to Max Holloway. You're basically guaranteeing that at least one of them stays in the top of that division. Ortega has also lost to Alexander Volkanovski. So I think that's just silly matchmaking. I love the matchup. I love the fight, and we're going to talk about that in a second. But I do believe the best way that you could have match-made the featherweight top 5 right now would be to say, hey, Korean Zombie, fuck you. Get out the fucking title fight, you bitch. Korean Zombie Josh Emmett, Calvin Kattar Brian Ortega, and Zabit versus Yair Rodriguez, whilst you do Volkanovski versus Holloway 3 in April as the main event. But they can't do that because Holloway said he would be injured for 6 months, and then randomly after Volkanovski signed a fight with the Korean Zombie, Holloway said, I'm absolutely fine to fight on the April date, which is very confusing for Alexander Volkanovski. I saw an interview where he was breaking down that apparently Holloway was going to be out for 6 months, and then as soon as he signs a fight with a Korean Zombie a couple of weeks later, Holloway's ready to fight on that date. And I believe Volkanovski believes that Holloway's pulling a fast one on him. He wasn't ready to fight in March, so he's going to make Volkanovski prepare for the Korean Zombie and then try and swoop in on an unprepared Alexander Volkanovski or something like that. I don't believe that's what Holloway's doing, but you can't blame Volkanovski for thinking that when you thought he was going to be out for 6 months, which is why you rescheduled in April against a Korean Zombie, and then all of a sudden there's no 6-month mandatory layout required injury anymore, and he can go right again in April. But either way, Brian Ortega, Yair Rodriguez. Let's talk about this matchup instead. I like this matchup. I think it's going to be a great fight. I think that Yair Rodriguez is going to tool up Brian Ortega until Brian Ortega randomly gets a guillotine out of nowhere in round 3 or 4. That's my official prediction for this fight. I know it was quick, but that's just how I see things going. Now on the feet, you have to assume at this point that Yair Rodriguez is probably better on the feet than Brian Ortega. He had an amazing performance against Max Holloway. Now, maybe Ortega would do better against Holloway in a rematch. I don't believe he would. I just don't think his stand-up is quite to that level. But then again, MMA makes zero fucking sense. Brian Ortega schooled the Korean Zombie for 5 rounds. And if you watch the Korean Zombie versus Yair Rodriguez and don't just look at the result of the fight, which is a finish at the end of the 5th round for Yair, you see that Korean Zombie was just very handily outstriking Yair for the majority of that fight that they had. Now, Yair did take that fight on a week's notice, which he needs to be actually respected for a little bit more, which I don't think he actually gets credit for. He took that fight on a week's notice or 2 weeks' notice, something like that. Very short notice to fight the Korean Zombie. So maybe full camp Yair is a mythological fighter because he looked absolutely amazing against Max Holloway. But I don't see him staying safe and not getting guillotined for the entirety of this fight. I think Brian Ortega, he took a lot of damage in his last fight, so there's always a chance that eventually that chin's going to start to leave him. But Yair Rodriguez took a lot of damage in his last fight as well. He took some big shots. Both of these guys have got really good chins. Yair is better on the feet. He just is. So I think if anyone's going to go out there and beat someone up for a bit on the feet, it's going to be Yair Rodriguez. He's got the better leg kicks, he's got the better body kicks, the better head kicks, he's got the better boxing as well. That's something that he massively improved, actually. I saw that in the Holloway fight. Before in his career, Yair's boxing was actually one of his weaknesses. He had to kick and keep you at range, because if you got into close range in the boxing, you'd kind of land quite good shots. We actually saw that even in the Korean Zombie fight. Simple boxing combinations were able to offset Yair Rodriguez's kicking game in that fight. But against Holloway, he reinvented himself and had definitely been working on his boxing since he's been on that holiday of sorts, let's say. USADA suspension, let's be real. All of a sudden came back with amazing 5-round cardio. Didn't have cardio for a 3-rounder with Jeremy Stephens, but hey, let me go 5 with Holloway with ease. Not with ease, but he won the 5th. And that's interesting to see, out of nowhere, in the middle of someone's career, after a USADA suspension, when they missed 2 USADA tests. Not because they took a drug, because they missed the tests for that drug. Very interesting to see. So maybe EPO Yair is a new mythological fighter, but I just keep noticing in Yair's fights, across the board, he always leaves his head in trouble for a guillotine. And I know that he's probably going to practice not putting his head in those positions. But I still believe that he's going to put his head in those positions. Because even against Max Holloway, he's doing great in the first round. I believe he won the first round, lost the second round in a very close second round. But Holloway, I believe, clearly won the close round in the second round. Round 3 and 4 were Holloway's. Round 5 was Yair Rodriguez. But at one point, I believe in round 4 of that Holloway fight, Yair keeps doing this head movement Canelo-y thing. Where I can't do it now because the mic's in the way. But where he dips his head down and starts sort of rolling one way, roll the other way. It's like the Canelo roll that he does, where he dips and then dips the other way again. And Yair kept doing that to Max Holloway. And it was working occasionally by dodging a lot of shots that Holloway was trying to throw and showing some good head movement. But eventually into the fight, once Yair used that defensive punches by rolling his head that way in front of himself, Holloway adjusted and latched up a real good guillotine, I believe in the 4th round, and actually almost finished Yair Rodriguez with that guillotine because it was a very tight guillotine. Now, this is Brian Ortega. You dip your head for 1 second, there's going to be problems, and Yair does this in other fights. He did it in the Korean Zombie fight. He actually did it at some points in the Jeremy Stephens fight as well. He'll make you miss. He'll dip his head down in front of you, and I think if he starts doing that with Brian Ortega, 1, he's got elbows coming his way, spinning elbows as well that he has to watch out for himself. I know Yair Rodriguez is usually the guy with the inventive elbows, but Ortega's got them too. And I think Volk is just that good. I think Ortega is good. He's a great striker. I think he's massively improved. I just think Volk is a cunt to deal with in that octagon. I really do. I think he's such a genius that he just makes people shit their pants and get into this mental battle with him about how to, like, decode the striking match that they're going into. And if you don't have, like, elevated levels of IQ, you're not really going to be able to beat Volkanovski in a technical striking match at this point, because he's so beyond people in terms of his setups and his feints and his sequences and combinations. I think he just made Ortega look a little bit more average, because I know a lot of people are mentioning stuff like after the Ortega Volkanovski fight, like, wow, what an amazing war that was. Volk clearly won rounds one. It was like a smooth sailing for Volk outside of the third round and the last 30 seconds of the fifth round. Pretty much, right? Outside of those 2 submission attempts in the third round and the end of the fifth round, it was pretty smooth sailing for Volkanovski. So I do believe that Yair Rodriguez does have the ability to maybe do what Korean Zombie couldn't, because in hindsight, Ortega was moving around loads on the outside, and the Korean Zombie, as much as I love him, he just goes forwards and backwards in fights in a straight line. Honestly, he genuinely does go forwards and backwards, straight line strikes, comes forward with a combination, moves backwards to counter, comes forwards again. He'll never really, like, change it up like Volkanovski by switching his stances and giving you a little stutter step and then coming around the other side. Like, forward, backwards, Ortega moves around on the outside. He got it done because of that. Maybe that's just a style matchup thing. But I just do believe that Yair Rodriguez is so wild in his approach sometimes and irresponsible with how he defends himself in certain positions, that Ortega will latch up that neck. And I think that Yair Rodriguez is going to go out there, do better, win the first round, win the second round, get into a bit of a scrap in the third round where Ortega's starting to sort of get the better of things. His toughness is starting to kick in. Yair's starting to slow down a little bit maybe as well. And I think come the fourth round, Yair's going to be in a bit of a scrap. He's going to start doing some funky stuff like spinning elbows by dipping his head down again, which is a big thing. Anytime he goes for that sort of inverted elbow that he goes for, that sort of 6 to 12 almost elbow inverted wise that he goes for, he dips his head. He dips his head a lot as well in general. And his head is just often in bad positions, and I can't unsee it when I watch his fights. And whenever I see him do that, I just, in my mind, imagine Ortega latching up a guillotine and submitting him in round 4. So I'm going to go with Brian Ortega, round 4 guillotine, if I had to give a prediction on that one. But where would the winner be if they win this one? I guess they could take on... I don't know. This is the problem with this matchup, because in my opinion, if you did Keita versus Ortega, Yair versus Zabit, and then Emmett versus... Fuck Emmett. I don't even know what you do with Emmett. But either way, there'd be some sort of clear progression of what you could do next in that division. But I feel like right now at featherweight, there's just an odd number of people that need matchups. And there's going to be one guy left out. And I'd rather it be Josh Emmett left out, let's just say. Maybe Holloway just says, fuck you, Volk. I'll stay active anyway and just fight Josh Emmett in the meantime. Or fight Zabit in the meantime. And then you do Keita versus Emmett. That could work out. That's probably what they will do next, in all honesty. They'll say, hey, Holloway, Zabit's coming back. Sound like a fun matchup? Holloway will probably say, hell yeah, it sounds like a fucking fun matchup. I can't get finished. I have great takedown defense and cardio for days. Give me a 5-rounder against Zabit's gassed out ass. You know what I mean? Because Zabit can spin and attack for a couple of rounds, and he might be the best fighter in the featherweight division for 2 rounds. But past that in a 5-rounder, I would probably trust Holloway to do that one. So if I was Holloway, that's probably what they're going to do next. If I was the matchmaker right now and I'd just made Ortega versus Yair, Emmett versus Keita, as sad as that is for Keita, I think that's probably what's next for him. Whilst Volkanovski Korean Zombie happens, and then do the winner of Emmett versus Keita versus the winner of Yair versus Ortega, and then do Zabit versus Holloway for a title shot in April. In the meantime, for a fight night main event, and there you go. That's the featherweight division match made. And the loser of this one's probably going to be out of the mix for a while. Probably go on that traditional slide that you see a lot of people go on once they've competed for the belt a couple of times or competed against top contenders a couple of times and it's failed. They start to sort of descent a little bit, especially in these lower weight classes compared to the bigger ones. But, yeah, I'd go with Brian Ortega. Yair's probably a bit better, but Ortega just capitalizes on these moments so well. I mean, how quickly he got that guillotine on Volk after just sort of knocking him off balance while catching a kick. Like, Yair's going to get a kick caught, end up on the ground. And I don't think Yair's jiu-jitsu is anywhere near the level of Volkanovski's. So I'm going to call submission for Ortega 3 or 4. In rounds 3 or 4. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Click that button up there. Toodle pip. I'll see you later. Goodbye. Toodle pip.